So welcome to our next session on repurposing obsolete rail infrastructure. My name is Hanna Szemzö. As I said, I'm a sociologist, and I'm actually the coordinator of the OpenHeritage project. So what you can see, and that's why we try to show you the video, that rail is in the air. The need to increase the use of rail because it's much more environmentally friendly is very obvious. So this is something that we will look into a bit more detail, but because we also see that as rail becomes more and more important again, the infrastructure itself is undergoing a profound transformation, and this is exactly what we will try to look into it. We will look into this process, and in this session we chose speakers to help you to understand more about this process. First, you will hear from András Ekés, who is our mobility expert, and to understand a bit what this change means from the perspective of a transportation infrastructure. And in the second, in the larger part of the session, we will look into different type of cultural, social, and business uses of this obsolete rail infrastructure. So now I'm inviting András to join us. He's here. Hello, András.
Hello, Hanna. Good morning, everybody.
Please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background.
So, good morning, everybody. My name is András Ekés. I'm managing director of the company Mobilissimus, located in Hungary, Budapest. And I'm working a lot with different scopes of urban and regional mobility. And just a second, because
take your time. I know you need to share the screen.
Okay, I hope you can see the screen, mine?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so we are working a lot with sustainable urban mobility planning. So we prepared a couple of sums, and we do a lot for awareness raising connected to our different projects, mainly in relation of the sustainable urban mobility. And we also do many projects for network and service planning and upgrading in cities and urban agglomerations.
Okay, thank you. So you are actually the expert we have been looking for. Please elaborate us and tell us a bit more about the reasons behind the changing rail infrastructure. Why is this infrastructure undergoing this profound transformation?
So there are a couple of reasons why the railway infrastructure is completely different to the situation what appeared the latest decades or during the beginning of the 20th century, because there were a lot of big railway yards, switching yards, and big railway stations performed for the steam engine and later on electric locomotive technologies, and it changed a lot. There are more and more modern motor units, so electric or diesel motor units needing less spaces. You don't have to go around the train when it arrives, so you don't have to uncouple and couple the locomotive. And also at a railway station, you need to spend much less time. So it's one reason. The other reason that the freight traffic has changed a lot. So there are more and more direct freight trains from, let's say, Rotterdam Harbor to the Central European big switching yards, but you don't need or you need less the partial freight train services from one station to another station, because it's more and more used, I would say, unfortunately, by the road freight traffic. On the other hand, you need more higher speed railway connections, and it's absolutely different in Western Europe, Northern Europe, and Central, Eastern, or Southern Europe, actually. But there are a lot of plans how to increase the commercial speed of the passenger and also the freight traffic. And that means that former previously developed railway tracks are not obviously suitable for higher speed traffic, so you will gain a lot of spaces. And the other idea that through stations are much more needed instead of classic terminal stations, because you can create more through directions from one point of Europe to the other point of Europe. I will show some good examples how it was implemented. And also that you have to know that urban development needs are quite strong. These railway areas and areas very close to the railway stations and railway infrastructures have a quite high value. And that means that if the railway needs less space and you can create good companies also involving the railway companies or a development company of the railway company, it will increase a lot the urban development potential of such an area. That means you will less obliged to leave the city and go to the outskirts of the city, both for living and for working, and you can get very good conditions in such a railway-based or former railway-based area. And also the environmental impacts are very important. We're thinking on what functions are needed in the middle of a city, let's say, connected to the railways, and what are the functions you can move away from the city to areas where it's not so important to have hard railway infrastructure. And I think this is the basic collection of the ideas of why you will get more and more railway based infrastructure facilities and possibilities to develop the urban environment.
Okay, thank you. That was, I think, a very, very useful introduction for us all, coming from different fields. Could you please show us a few good and bad examples of reuse where actually the railway is still involved? So it's not a different type of use, it's a use where mobility is involved, but actually it shows the future.
Yeah, thank you, Hanna. I will show you some good examples and other type of examples about railway-based regeneration or not regeneration still. The first group will be the harmony of mobility and spatial development. If you remember the Vienna Südbahnhof, so the former southern railway station, it was a classic end station of regional and some intercity trains, and you can see on this picture how it was a very special area of Vienna. It was a unique railway station in Europe too, with a rectangular or so 90 degrees location of two railway stations in the same place, but you couldn't go through only for technical purposes, so trains had to stop there and go back to the southern part of Vienna and to Graz or to Bratislava and Győr in Hungary, for example. And it was a very, very obsolete area of the city of Vienna, and decided in the beginning of the years 2000 to create a new through main station. And it was opened by the end of 2012 at the changes of the European timetable. And it is now one of the best solutions how to create a through railway station with urban development and with 20,000 workspaces and a couple of thousand new housing possibilities, new flats. And it's now a new center of the city of Vienna. It's a very modern and very passenger-friendly solution how to create very good areas for renewing the railway functions. Another example, it's between the Munich main station in Germany and the station Pasing. You have 5 different stops of the S-Bahn between Pasing and Munich main station. And during these 60 hectares, there are around 15,000 new workspaces and 7,500 new flats for inhabitants. And it's an absolutely innovative and attractive area, because the Deutsche Bahn needs much less space in the city of Munich that needed before. And a Hungarian example, there was the former Northern Heating House in Budapest. This was the first one in the city, but after many decades, before the years of 2000, it was almost closed down. Only some locomotives were stocked here without any function. And within 2 years of preparation and implementation, a new railway history park, which is one of the most famous railway history locations in Budapest, was opened, and it's very popular and growing using the former railway tracks. I will show a completely different solution. You have a very important international railway corridor at the seaside of the Mediterranean Sea between Marseille, Nice and Genova, and between Ospedaletti in Italy and San Lorenzo al Mare through Sanremo. The railway were put in a tunnel to have higher speed, because now it's a straight line in tunnel. You cannot see the sea from the trains, but the speed is much higher. And on the former railway tracks, you have a very good cyclist corridor, and it's one of the best ones. You can go with your bicycle, or you can rent a bike through different settlements, Ospedaletti, Sanremo, Santo Stefano al Mare, and San Lorenzo al Mare, and you can enjoy the Mediterranean Sea. Also, you can go through a big and long tunnel. There are some dreams for plans and plans for regeneration. This is the second group. There was a former Northern Railway repairing works. It's not what I showed before. It's a different location in Budapest. And that means that there is a new Eiffel Art Studio on the place of the formerly closed railway area. And also there will be the new transport museum at this location, but this is under planning, and there is actually a temporary exhibition for those people who are interested in the urban and railway transport. And the latest, or the last category, I would say, where the time was slowing down, so almost nothing happened. One example is Sotteville-Rouen in France, close to the city of Rouen, where SNCF, the French railway company, regroups all locomotives not used anymore, and they are demolished time to time. And this was a previous big railway switching yard. And a very similar example, the Rákosrendező railway station in Budapest, which was a very heavy freight traffic switching yard until the 1990s. And after that, it was a very unused period of this railway station, because the freight directions changed completely, but nothing happened with the renewal of the buildings and the tracks. But there are plans how to renew it and how to give quite similar functions as I showed for the Munich main station and passing area. Only at the edges of this area, some new housing investments appeared, which I would consider as the first signs of that revaluation of this urban area. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, András. This was a super introduction for us to see this everything in context. So what we'll do now is we will start a virtual tour across Europe. So András was András just set the tone for this, and with the help of our wonderful conductor, Stefania, who through Freiburg will guide us and show us various interesting social, cultural, and business reuses of obsolete rail infrastructure. So, all aboard.
Welcome, everyone, to our broadcasting station here in Freiburg. It's time to hop on the Informed Cities wagon, so please mind the gap between the platform and the train. The first stop of this virtual journey is Berlin. and the Zentrum für Art und Urbanistics, located in the district of Moabit. We will meet Matthias Einhoff, co-founder and director of this interdisciplinary hub for urban research and artistic practice, located in a former railway station. Next to his curatorial responsibilities, Matthias is involved in research-based projects, bridging the gap between urban discourse and artistic practice. He's also a visiting professor and an active citizen of Berlin. Matthias, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me. Hi. Thanks, Stefania, for this nice introduction. And yeah, thanks for having me in the conference. I'm here to give you a little insight into one of the, so to say, call it case studies of a transformation of a cargo station into a hybrid cultural and social hub. And I'll just guide you through what we do and how we function and what's happening in Berlin. Here we are. This is the former cargo station. As you can see, most of the outer appearance is still intact. And to contextualize a little bit where this station is located, I prepared this wonderful aerial view from the 70s. And as you can see here, the red arrow is pointing you towards where we are located at the border of a residential area to the right side. There's the West Harbor, and right in front of you. And in between, there's the circular line going past a building, which is very interesting also in regards to potential audiences that you can reach out to as a cultural hub. Just want to give you a little impression of how this place was used in the past. This is a picture that I found in the archives. On the left top corner, you can see the train track still going into that area where our cargo station is located. It's blurry in the background, and there was quite a lot of activity there, which you can see in this slide. So here I found a beautiful map of the cargo that was transported into the city, and which cargo, which is like livestock, building materials, and all kinds of industrial goods that were carried into the cities. And as András already mentioned, of course, the nature of transport has changed over the years, and now most of the goods are transported into the city of Berlin through trucks and lorries and distributed more individually into the city. When we came across the station, which was through a public tender in the year 2009, it pretty much looked like this. So this is the backside of the building, and you can see the area where the tracks used to run into our cargo station area. The front of that looked similar. The building was at that point in 2009 used mostly as a random storage for individual small enterprises, but most of the building parts were not in use. The city had created a public tender, and we as a non-for-profit organization went into the competition and came up with a concept that the city thought was worthy looking at. So what happened was they prepared the area, and this is how we more or less got the building. So it was still in a ruined state, and we had to invest around 1.4 million euros into turning this sort of half ruin into a functioning social and cultural hub. And I'm gonna guide you through the building, how it looks now. And I have a division between hardware and software. Hardware is the physical stuff that you'll see when you come there. So for once, we have the former cargo hall where the goods were stored on pallets. And this is now used for cultural events, conferences, exhibitions. In the back, we have the former platform, which is now a public terrace, which is used for public events, and we run a bar on the public terrace. And down in the cellar, it's a very beautiful dungeon. And so we decided also to activate that and to get the permissions for using this for exhibitions and also for local festivities. The software of ZKU is divided into two parts. And I'll explain this a little bit through some pictures. Here you can see we have two parts of the building. The right-hand side is the former administrative building of the cargo station. The left-hand side is the cargo hall that I showed you in an earlier slide. And these are used for two different things. On the right-hand side, we run an artist residency program. So we turn these former administrative building into an artist residency where artists live and work on a temporary base between 3 and 8 months. And we have around 14 different units in that part. On the left-hand side, that's the so-called common space that we use for public events. What we try to do is to connect the global discourse happening on the right-hand side with the local practice happening on the left-hand side. Here's a picture from one of our events, Open House in the cargo hall, which is a monthly reoccurring format, we call it, which we do to present what's happening in the house to the local public. And here's another picture from what's happening out on the terrace that I showed you on an earlier slide. And this is like from another format that we've created called Fußballerballa, where we do public viewings of football games, but we contextualize that with a critical program around the cities where the World Cup is happening. So we have this kind of division of projects, which we run in all of that cargo station, the former cargo station. And once a project has become a more stable unit, it becomes a format. So we have, over the years, created quite a lot of formats which are reliable sort of events where the neighborhood and the local public know this is going to happen once a week, once a month, and so on. And sorry, wrong slide. So what we try to do is we try to activate our local potentials because we are located right here adjacent to this residential area that I mentioned also earlier. It is a sort of former proletarian industrial area, and still today it is looked at as a social sort of place with social conflicts. So we try to create a forum where different people can come together and social conflicts can sort of be looked at and tackled in our space. And we try to create opportunities for people to come in touch with one another and with us. So here's just a picture of one format that we do that's very popular, happening once a month. It's the Güter Market. It's sort of a flea market and a secondhand bicycle market, which is now the biggest bicycle market in Berlin. We create also the opportunities for local craftspeople, so local tailors can offer their services on the flea market. And at the end of the day, what we try to do is to strengthen our neighborhood by bringing them together also through local public dining evenings, and by also, and this is one part of the work that we have to do, also creating a nice park. And our park actually is heavily used, as you can see on the left side, actually. But it's part of our responsibility also to look after this public asset. Now, I want to talk a little bit and briefly about the ownership and how it basically, legally speaking, works. I have an aerial view for this to explain that. So from the top, you can see there's the building and there's a surrounding public park. So the public park is still in the public hand. And I have here from the registry a map where the yellow parts are those that sort of belong to our non-for-profit organization that I'm heading as a director. And this part we have a heritable building right for. Now, I want to explain what a heritable building right is. It divides up the ownership. So the buildings are property of our organization, whereas the land that the building is standing on is still in the ownership of our local district. It's still in public ownership. So this is divided. And we have a 40-year lease that allows us to plan far ahead and to invest also into the building. And after these 40 years, we will renegotiate the contract with the local municipality. So once again, the division of the building from the land is sort of one characteristic of a heritable building right. And we pay a monthly interest, which is evaluated by looking at the value of the land. And we pay around 3 to 6, or usually you pay 3 to 6.5% on the value of the land, which is re-evaluated every 5 years in the sort of public process. So we, for ZKU, pay sort of around 1,500 euros per month, which is incredibly cheap because we have cultural use and have a rather low interest that we pay for the land. Now, the good thing about a heritable building right is that we can be obliged through the contract that we're in with the public district to do specific things. So in our case, cultural and social activities. If we decided to run a commercial business overnight, we would not be fulfilling our contract, and the building would fall back into the hand of the municipality. What would happen then is it would be evaluated, and we as a non-for-profit, or as an organization rather, would then get what the building is worth at that moment in time. The thing, and what I like about this kind of contract, is it divides the power between the public hand and us as a non-profit, but still private organization. And we have a sort of long-term perspective, 40 years, that we can invest our time and money into that building. And we know we won't have to leave after 5 years because our normal rental contract would have run out. So it gives us a long-term perspective. And for the city, after 40 years, it can still make decisions on what shall happen on that land. So for both sides, I think it's a good situation. Now, just very briefly, a look into how do we finance all this. And this is incredibly complex, but I'll just very briefly explain it. So mostly our program or the house is run by funding, which usually is project-related funding, which comes from the EU, from our federal government, regional and local sources. And we run our residency program with different partners. So we have income through renting out the space on rather long-term contracts that creates a stable sort of income. All these financial income sources enable us to run projects and to also fund and subsidize residencies for artists coming to our place. We also run a bar, which create some income, but not very substantially. It's mostly a service that we offer to be attractive to our local public. And we, of course, run our regular formats that I showed you earlier, Fußballer, Gütermarkt, and things that are sort of good for our local public. And just a few words before I will leave you on a little train ride. The future of ZKU, after 10 years, we're going through a second stage of renovations and constructions. And here you see, right now we're a construction site and only half functional. And we're going to be building a second layer on top of that building and modernize parts of it because the accessibility was not so perfect. And also heating and sustainable sort of energetic concept wasn't ideal. So for that, we were able to obtain EU and regional funding to create an energetic construction around the existing building. So we try to maintain the character of that cargo station and still modernize it, as you can see here in these slides. And that's pretty much all I have to say at this moment. Thanks for your attention. And Stefania, thanks for having me again on your...
Thank you, Matthias. The doors are now closing. We have to continue our journey to the east and visit the Ukraine. Our next stop is Lem Station in Lviv, where we will meet Gregory Zarkhin, a project manager of an emerging hub of creativity and innovation, aiming to make change, creating opportunities. Let's see how Lem Station is becoming a place for local enterprising community to flourish. This project is rather in an early stage, so it will be interesting to contrast it with the long year experience of ZKU. Gregory, welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, 1 second. Let me put the screen on. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the great introduction. I would like to showcase LAMP Station, a creative innovative hub in Lviv. So this is the more modern visualization that we've created. It is a former tram depot located in the city center of Lviv, and it is the oldest and first tram depot in the city. It's important to know a little bit of the historical context of the building. So the history started in 1894 with the Craiova Expo that was supposed to host 1 million people in a year time span, and the capacity of the city was 200,000 citizens. Thus, a decision to create railway transportation arose. So Siemens and Halske company, they won a tender for the for the tram transportation, and in 1894 they built the first hangar on the left top building, and they started the electrification of the power plant of the location. In 1906, the hangar on the right also arose, and then in 1926 they were merged with the passage type of hangar, joining and filling in the whole picture. In 1980s, it was a very vibrant location already on the outskirts of the city center, and it was bursting with life and a lot of trams in the location. So it's interesting to see the picture from 1920s and to compare the looks of it as it was in 2016 when we've received the location. Actually, the project started in 2015 after a group of independent businessmen decided to push the government a little bit towards creative economics and creative businesses. So they also introduced the LAMP Station project on open tender and won the tender for renovation of the location. Just in the months of time in December 2016, this is how the location looked like. We were preparing for the Lviv Mozart classical music concert, one of the biggest in Ukraine, and the work that was done was actually colossal. And I would like to showcase a little bit of that in the video right now. Okay, so the Creative Hub LAMP Station is named in the honor of the world-renowned science fiction writer Stanislav Lem, famous by the work of Solaris, and he lived first quarter of his life in Lviv. He was very famous for his sharp mind, strive for innovation, and a little bit of self-irony. So this is something that we really put as our backbone when creating the concept. The vision of the project is to make change by creating opportunities. We're trying to gather the people as the main commodity in the location and create all the right environment for them to strive. Here, people can create new ideas, gain access to innovative tools and financial resources in order to build up ready-made goods and services and scale them further on. revitalization process, we divided it in 3 phases. So this is how it's marked on the location, a little bit more in depth. First on is the Yontihi Square and the co-working space, a 3-story co-working space that we are also operators of. Also, there's going to be a restaurant with some of our investors as operators of, and a couple of stores with local products, goods and services. This is the co-working interior concept. And here is the networking zone, and this is the central hangar, where food court, media hub, and the meetup zone is going to take place. Next on the event hall in the right hangar with a 400 people seating capacity for various events, mainly in culture, business, classical music, or jazz music. A 3-story makerspace where people can create their own prototypes, and then we help them to scale them up through the acceleration programs, or just a place for IT people to relax in the evening and do some woodcrafting job. The Stanislav Lem Square, we're actually very fortunate with a great location. We're on the pathways of 3 big local parks and 3 local universities. So e-mobility for us and transportation is very important because of the food flow and the amount of people going through the location. So we're going to set up the bus stop, the bicycle lanes, parking spots, tram station, and also the chargers for the cars. The art center is the 3rd phase, and this is actually the old compressor station built in 1987 by Soviet Union developers. It was supposed to be a station to pump air into the underground metro, the project that unfortunately was never launched because of the collapse of Soviet Union and the chaos that happened. So just in general, the timeline of the opening, now we're approaching stage 2 of the renovation, and the final project is going to be commissioned by year 2023, but already from year 2022, we are going to be partly operating the way we should. So the concept of rethink, restore, and reuse is very important for us. And here on one of the interior concepts, you can see that we are trying to reuse the old items that we found on the location, try to keep the authenticity of it and find new meanings for the items. We've created our own restoration department with our maker residents in the compressor station, where at the moment they're restoring old gates, doors, windows. In general, the authenticity of the look of the building is very important for us, and the fair share of work is at the renovation process and us trying to keep it as authentic and also embrace the innovation as much as we can. So we cleaned the location from over 1,000 tons of garbage in the past years. And as it often is the case, we found over 1,000 artifacts in that garbage as well. All of those artifacts are preserved, numbered, and now we're working with designers and architects trying to find either new purposes for those items or use them with the same purposes as they were used before. Events are a huge part of our location, and just as now the central hangar and right hangar got closed for the reconstruction, thus we had our last event at the current stage. All of the events till now were free events. We didn't charge anything for doing those events. We had over 70,000 people going through our doors with 60 distinct events. Those are normally inclusivity events, cultural events, theatrical, art and science, jazz and classical music concerts, and also gastronomy. So this is the group of our investors and co-founders. So the whole project is all privately financed. All of those people are well-renowned businessmen in the city, normally in the field of IT and Horeca sphere. So at the moment, we already $1.8 million got invested in the project, with the total estimate of the budget $5 million. What's important about the property is that it's still owned by the city, and we are renting it without the right for purchase for 50 years of time. It's a pretty unique type of collaboration of the city council and the private investors. And it's nice to see that those kind of initiatives are building up in the city. So thank you very much. And I hope to talk later in the panel.
Okay, thank you so much, Gregory. It was super interesting. May I ask you to please stop sharing your screen? I would. This is just a small interruption for both. I would also like to invite Matthias to come back, because I would have one question, one to you and one to Matthias. And first, if Matthias is there, hello. Sorry, it was. I mean, I think there are quite a lot of similarities between these projects, but really interesting. I mean, but there's a huge difference. I mean, my impression has been that the Berlin Matthias project is fully, strongly public finance, whereas we just see that, so that the LEM station is really private. So the question goes around this. To Matthias, my question would be, so do you think your model could be transferred to countries which are less affluent, where there is less public money available? And if yes, how?
Yeah, clearly we live in a very privileged sort of situation with our local support coming in. Although I do have to say we do not have any institutional funding, so all the running that building is fully relies on our own sort of economy, which can be funding, but which also is by running a bar and running other events. So it is not necessarily that we are sort of fully funded. But to answer your question, I guess like most of the funding that we obtain comes from the EU. So and comes through EU networking projects like Creative Europe projects, Horizon 2020 projects, Erasmus Plus projects. So these are projects that other sort of cultural associations are eligible for. So this is not something that is limited to Berlin or Germany. And therefore, yes, partly this can surely be translated. There's another thing that I tried to explain, which is also we also have some public obligations, which is to maintain the park around us. So there, on that side, we on the one side have the privilege of having this building for a very or rather cheap lease, but on the other side, we look after public. We have responsibility for the public park, and so it is also a relation that comes also with some duties. And but I think it's interesting because we sort of have the obligation to work also in the public interest, and because we have this strong relation with our public administrations, and not to work sort of in private interests for which could be, I think, like in the case in Lviv, it's actually a very nice and very cool sort of investors in there, but it could also be different, and therefore I think it's good in regards to strengthening the public space to create these relations between public and the non-profit organizations.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Matthias. That was very interesting. So, if I understand right, then the main money that finances refurbishments comes from the EU level, and then the running costs are partially, the revenues are partially actually covered by you by having a bar and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was actually very enlightening. Gregory, may I ask you to come back if you're here? Okay, thank you. Okay, just one, I think it's going to be a very interesting comparison to Matthias' project, is that this is not the only one project in Lviv that I know that is actually fully privately financed. And what would interest me that I know in case of a gem factory, you basically have a benefactor, so there is not really expected return. What is, in your case, is it a benevolent action actually by very wealthy and Lviv-loving entrepreneurs who want to give back to their city, or do they expect something in return? I mean, financially. So is it an investment, or something else?
It is not the typical development project. So a lot of it is actually a social impact type of project. However, the project is expected to be self-sustainable, and all the investors are expecting at least to break even after a couple years of time. So we are taking it as a serious project. However, there are some responsibilities that we have in front of the city and the public, especially because we got such a great location, is, for example, a couple of sub-brands are important to have, and we promise that we're going to have them, like co-working space, like event center, and like a maker space and art center. So those four are like the core, and with those four sub-brands, it is not that important to be profitable, just self-sustainable. And with the other projects, we can renegotiate the revenues in order to keep the whole project sustainable.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for this. And now I think we're going to continue our tour. So I give back the word to our wonderful conductor, Stefania.
Thank you, Hanna. Thank you. Let's follow the rail tracks to the south of Europe. I am particularly happy to take you to my homeland, Greece, to visit to Treno στο Rouf, Athens Railway Carriage Theatre. This unusual project is represented here today by Evanthia Kairi, a museologist who lays emphasis on conservation, research, and promotion of cultural heritage in order to educate, but also to entertain. Evanthia has worked with significant cultural institutions in Greece and abroad, and has acquired valuable experiences in exhibition curating and organizing and promoting cultural events. We're really happy to have you here, Evanthia. Thank you for being here. The rail is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to present you our cultural venue, the unique railway carriage theatre to Treno στο Rouf. Let me share my screen. Can you see me? The famous 19th century fiction novelist Jules Verne heralded in his novels the most amazing inventions of the 20th century, including a theatre wagon of a train set in his famous book Around the World in 80 Days. More than a century later, in 1997, the train theatre was created by well-known Greek actress and director Tatiana Ligari. She ventured to realize her original idea to stage a theatrical play in a manner which was site-specific, namely inside an actual train wagon. She therefore collected and restored old wagons and made them into a home for original artistic productions, dining and recreation. In this way, an innovative boutique railway cultural venue came to life inside vintage carriages. The Treno στο Rouf, which means the train at Rouf, is situated at one of the platforms of the railway station of Rouf. It's an area in the center of Athens, a few minutes away from crowded gas entertainment district. The railway carriage theatre to Treno στο Rouf is an actual full-length vintage train. It consists of 10 restored antique cars, which constitute evidence to contemporary Greek history and industrial heritage. They are now home to a theatre stage, a music stage, a restaurant, a bar and a foyer, dressing rooms and utility rooms, where all kinds of cultural events take place. The Treno στο Rouf is the only train in the world which carries you through culture, taste and entertainment. Thanks to the originality of the venue and the exceptional quality of the performances, it has won over the hearts and minds of the public and received endless rave reviews in the Greek and foreign media. Here are some facts. The Treno στο Rouf is run by Axana Arts Company, a non-profit organization founded in 1996 by influential figures from the world of the arts. The artistic and administrative management of the company is undertaken by the actress and director Kairi, who has always been striving for quality and innovation. It aims to promote culture within and beyond the borders of Greece, to promote young creative forces, and also to materialize pioneering and innovative ideas in the sector of performing arts. Both the public and the media have acknowledged the Xana Arts Company as the supporter and promoter of young cultural groups and creators, and as a nursery for young artists. The core of its activities is theatrical production, but also music, visual arts, and of course, dining and entertainment. The artistic program consists of various cultural productions. First of all, theater, music, dance, theater activities and educational programs for children, visual arts, guided tours, festivals, young artists projects, exhibitions, screenings, lectures, and even fashion shows. All this equally paired with dining inside the music wagon and the wagon restaurant, as to Treno Rouf was the first theatrical venue in Greece which introduced dining in such venues. Over the years, successful cultural productions have gone on tour throughout Greece and also to foreign countries. Xana has also formed partnerships with other key cultural organizations. Next to its cultural opus, Xana also engages in a year-long social commitment in cooperation with institutions and charity organizations. But most of all, Xana has been related to the creation of the unique railway carriage theatre to Treno Rouf, which constitutes a worldwide cultural vanguard, a groundbreaking exploration of the aesthetics and functionality of cultural and theatrical venues. 24 years ago, as the venue first opened, Rouf area was a semi-abandoned post-industrial quarter. The success of the venture not only put the previously run-down area of Rouf back on the map, but also acted as a catalyst for the area's resurgence by attracting a variety of different cultural influences to the wider area, which is considered today as Athens' avant-garde cultural district. Now let me give you a very short tour through our venue. 24 years ago, Mrs. REcyclerie, who is a proven train lover, acknowledged the inherent historical and aesthetic value of these old carriages, which laid abandoned in train scrapyards, and brought them again back to life. There has been a lot of work done to preserve them. With great consideration and respect for authenticity and originality, the carriages were refurbished, and they were transported to Rouf railway station, where they were transformed into a cultural venue. The first and only train theatre was created. Its carriage has its own history and origin, and is a multifunctional cultural venue per se. The train leads a powerful Breda locomotive, an Italian technological achievement of its time. A rare piece of machinery and a listed monument, it's one of the 20 ever made, manufactured in 1953 to be given as war compensations to Greece after World War II. Our jewel, of course, is an authentic wagon restaurant of the celebrated Orient Express, and in particular of the Simplon route. One of the few remaining examples of its type, and a listed monument as well, it was constructed in 1926 and is also known as the Greek wagon. Having both historical and aesthetic value, it is steeped in the atmosphere of this legendary era. Nowadays, it is home to our little music stage, therefore we call it the music wagon. Only 33 guests each time have the chance to experience a unique evening. Original music performances, art events, and theme nights are held here, as well as romantic dinners. Following is an old wooden Bulgarian cargo from the 1960s. Nowadays, it's the wagon bar, which runs as the foyer and reception area. Next comes the wagon restaurant, a restored Italian mid-war dining car. Guests can enjoy dinner in the romantic atmosphere of a bygone era, and also visit the art installations, exhibitions, and innovative artistic events held here. The main attraction, of course, is the theatre wagon, a fully refurbished Italian passenger carriage dating back in the 50s. It has been transformed into a small, charming, and fully equipped stage, the only train theatre in the world. It hosts theatrical and musical events, lectures, and many more, and it is also fitted with a mechanism which simulates the motion of a train. Running for 24 years, it has hosted countless productions, many of those directed or performed by Mrs. Ligari herself. At the rear of the train, there is a German rail car dating back in the 50s, consisting of 12 compartments. We call it the new wagon as it was the last to join. Since 2011, it has been hosting annually a progressive festival for young artists, as well as a modern dance festival and many experimental productions. Every spring and summer, the cultural program unfolds onto the platform of the station called Apovathra in Greek. At the open-air bar restaurant Apovathra, guests can enjoy cinema screenings and live concerts next to the illuminated wagons and the flowering oleanders and olive trees. We would love to welcome you to the Railway Carriage Theatre to Treno to Rouf and give you an actual on-site tour. Thank you.
Artistic touch to our journey. Our locomotive needs to accelerate now to reach Paris and meet Yilmaz Vurucu, an award-winning filmmaker. His work covers a wide range of subjects, ranging from the ethics of technological development to sustainable urban regeneration, social inclusion, and sustainable tourism. On behalf of our partners at Utopian, he has been recently capturing the adaptive reuse stories of OpenHeritage documentary series, which you can freely access on the OpenHeritage website. Today, he is representing GECO project, developing tools for generating the commons. In his quest, he has selected to share the story of REcyclerie in Paris, but also the Bahnhof in Vienna. Yilmaz, the rail is yours. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of Utopian, as you explained. We're a communication partner in the Generative Commons project. And I'll talk about the project and what we do at the end of this presentation, but let's get going. I'd like to share my screen here and start my presentation. There we go. So it's the year of the rail, and yeah, that leaves us pondering on the common value of railways in general. And we also have to especially consider the state of railway infrastructure. There's been tremendous efforts put into modernize railway infrastructure, especially over the last half a century, which has resulted in leaving parts or whole chunks of it vacant or underused. But the question that we're facing is, how do we deal with these unused spaces, and how do we handle them, especially when in terms of the commons, and how do we translate their use? How do we translate them into a use for the community? And that is the topic of my talk today. Just as a basic, overview, the development of the modern railway system in Europe came about thanks to two factors. It was the technological advances as well as war. And the development allowed mass transportation of materials and people. And today, the needs that we expect from railways are much different. In general, railway transportation, we see them competing more with air transport and with motorized vehicles. And modernizations, centralizations, etc., result in the abandonment or disuse of railway tracks and buildings and other infrastructure items. And some of these tracks are outdated and too costly to maintain. And the remnants of these tracks and buildings remain physically still there, given that removing them or shutting them down totally would require an upheaval of major arteries and infrastructure. So it's not an easy task to undertake. And this leaves in return kilometers of tracks, some of them even passing through city centers, as well as train stations and other infrastructure buildings, empty, desolate, unused. And oftentimes finding a new use for them is challenging. And that's why I wanted to present two cases or concepts or examples or scenarios which could perhaps be repeated. The first one is REcyclerie, pardon my French, we say. It's located in the 18th district of Paris, and the building was used as part of a larger 32-kilometer stretch running around or through Paris. the Gara or Nano was open for public use in the late 1800s, and it closed once more within 74 years. But more important than history of it for us is the current state, and that's much more interesting and inspiring for us. So what happened is a consortium of groups or group of initiatives transformed this environment and created a socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable mixed-use place. And the current model for regeneration of the site is based on the 3 R's, and those 3 R's, as you can see here, is reduce, reuse, and recycle. And every program or institution initiated within the project is based on contributing towards these values. So for instance, there's an urban farm that uses waste from the waste sorting center as fertilizer. The atelier promotes repairing items instead of purchasing new ones that create waste, and etc. So let me just summarize what projects are on site. There's the Cafe Canteen, which offers locally produced healthy products, which is unique at the Paris city center, not easy to find. It brings the neighborhood together, obviously, and acts as a hub for the community. The urban farm, which is located along the railway tracks, and this is very interesting, it's gorgeous. It makes use of the space, the tracks literally, in a very unique manner. And this also provides a biodiversity in the city center and offers the community, including the younger generation, especially, awareness on farming and nutrition. And as mentioned, yeah, there's a repair shop. The repair shop offers courses as well as tools and objects. And it serves as a repair hub and exchange platform on knowledge and tools. And last but not least, social inclusion is one of the main goals of the project and the organization, and community events taking place year-round allow a wider group of people to use and utilize the premises. And another project, in contrast, is the Nordbahnhalle project in Wien. I currently live in Vienna, and I did visit this project on site quite often, quite a few times, and it was gorgeous when it was in use, but there's a story behind it that I'll get into. Now it's located in the 2nd district of Vienna, and this area was used to receive a lot of major flooding, and once that was solved via the Danube Canal project, the flooding problem was taken care of, and that made today the 2nd and the 20th districts became flood-free and dry. And so this building was initially used as a freight station for the booming industry in the area, and it became one of the major transport hubs of Vienna during the era of industrialization. Following World War II, however, the building fell into a state of disrepair and was basically left to rot because it was no longer utilized. An ambitious development project in the late 90s began transforming all of the surrounding area around the Nordbahnhalle into a modern residential zone with offices and wide streets and parks, etc. Mission Impossible, a consortium led by the Technical University of Vienna, developed a community-based interim use for the empty space of the Nordbahnhalle. The experimental site boasted a sustainable mix of uses, as you see here, including co-working spaces, an event space, a space for the university, and it also acted as a research hub. Funding was provided by the National Climate and Energy Fund, and the owner of the property, the National Railways Austrian ÖBB, basically allowed rent-free interim use during that period. Now in 2019, the temporary use agreement expired, and this sparked a reaction from the community, and there were month-long protests against the ÖBB, the Austrian rail system, which owned the building, requesting that it be put use once more for the community. A petition was signed with nearly 4,000 local residents who signed it to help promote the preservation of the hall. But unfortunately, one night, an unexpected fire broke out, and that ended the debate because the building was burnt down. And yeah, now it stays there in that state. So these two distinctive scenarios on how citizen engagement can go is something that I want to present to you. Of course, there's a lot of challenges, and these are deeper issues. We, as the Generative Commons Project, we mapped more than 200 commons initiatives from across Europe, analyzing about 50 of them. And our conclusion is that citizens' initiatives often face power asymmetrics. They also create local value, but in terms of rights over properties and the financial sustainability of their projects, they face serious challenges, which is why we created a series of tools to help such initiatives launch and maintain their activities And you can visit our website at generative-commons.eu for more information and to access the toolkits, which should be up within a month. We're currently in the process of developing them. And that is, I believe, the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to call now we are slowly approaching the closing of our session, so please stay here. And I would like to call, every other speaker to join us for a very, very short closing conversation. I would like to pose 2 questions and feel free to answer to the best of your knowledge or wishes. One was a very important question that came actually in the chat about gentrification. And really, the questionable questions is, what do you do if you repurpose a large site? Will it mean necessarily that the surrounding area is gentrified? I think that would be one thing to consider. You don't all have. And the second I'd like to question again is, that's a very broad one. So rail, why always? There's so much obsolete infrastructure. We talk about rail because this is the European Year of the Rail, and because we also love rail. But there are also other things that you could join and you could repurpose. So the question is, what makes rail or rail infrastructure so wonderfully attractive? These are the 2 questions I'd like to leave you with, and feel free to answer whatever is interesting for you and your place with. And don't be shy, please go ahead. Matthias, please.
Sure. Yeah, maybe just because this is a question that we're very often sort of asked about gentrification, especially in Berlin, as one of the cities that has been looking at the highest price rises in rents over the last 10 years. And I guess my answer is, of course, if we as a cultural and social hub create a social and cultural program, this will create more quality for the area. And sooner or later, we will be part also of the pros of people selling or renting out their sort of real estate. This is something that basically we cannot do much about because these are not directly connected. And because we couldn't buy into the ownership or our political influence isn't big enough to stop any kinds of price raises in the rental or real estate market. So these are connected, no question. And it would be a lie if I'd be saying, no, we don't have an impact in regards to gentrification. Now, the question is also, shall we then stop doing anything that is sort of culturally related in these areas? Is that sort of the answer to that? I don't think so. I think what we can do is we can create programming that maybe also politicizes people and gives them a voice, also mostly people maybe that are more precarious and marginalized, and to create a stage for them and to give them a political voice, and then to give them also the instruments that exist to the hand so they can influence their local politics and go beyond that. So in a way, we will have both. No matter what we do, we'll have gentrification through the stuff that we do, but we can also empower those that might be affected by gentrification and give them a platform for articulation.
Okay. Thank you, Matthias. That was a very good, I totally agreed with you. So I was very happy listening to your answer. But the floor is open to Yilmaz, Gregory, or Evanthia, either of the 2 questions, if we would like to react to.
I just I would like to make an additional point to what Matthias said. I think that what I've experienced, I'm not one of the developers or something, but as a storyteller, what I've seen is that through gentrification, that is a big issue, but a majority of the responsibility, I believe, lies in the policies and the procedures and the politics of the region and the area. And local politics needs to be connected to these institutions and to initiatives. And there needs to be an exchange happening in between, in which this can kind of be mitigated in a way, in which there can be more, let's say, social housing or more social initiatives that to promote community uses in certain areas, and new regulations and rules are passed to ensure that perhaps the market value of things don't skyrocket to that extent. That's part of a larger debate. I don't know how much local initiatives themselves can change that, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Gregory or
I have
Evanthia?
comments turning.
Please.
Yeah, I believe in many cases this kind of issue with gentrification is more suitable for bigger cities or world capitals, since Lviv is considered a smaller city and we don't have especially many people renting houses here, and the real estate sphere is a little bit different over here. I think that it's not going to have that much of an impact. Plus, one of the reasons why people, actually locals, support this kind of gentrification is because the city center is just overcrowded with tourists, and it's already not for the locals. So people are actually loving it that there are some of those little pockets for locals to have this new city center and spend their time in. So don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, at least in a couple of years in the future for now.
Yeah. And what has been your experience, Evanthia, in Athens around your wonderful project?
Well, as I said, the area of Rouf was abandoned. It is a post-industrial quarter. There has been workshops there which were closed, and nothing was happening. But it is very close to Gazi, and as Mrs. Ligari created the train there in 1997, I wasn't working there at the time. She saw a gradual resurgence of the area in terms of culture. It's small companies opened gradually, cafes, restaurants, and it became also an avant-garde area, as well as Gazi already is, which is nearby. I would like to say that the Treno to Rouf is a private initiative. It's the dream and the vision of the actress and director Tatiana Ligari. She's a train lover herself. She adores it. She travels by train. She has traveled in many, many places. And it was her dream to realize such a thing which was unique. And as she has also researched, there hasn't been something like this before. So the gentrification is mostly in terms of culture for the area, and not in terms of buildings for...
Not socially, you mean that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very, very much I definitely would like to thank you all the presenters. I think the presentations they were really wonderful. I'd like to call the attention of all our audience members that you can actually look up these projects in detail. If you look at the chat box, they have all been posted there. And additionally, I'd like to encourage everyone to follow OpenHeritage and Green Charge, which are the two projects organizing this conference. And at last but not least, we do have a networking carousel going on beginning right now, which will be, let's call it a speed dating session. So you can meet new people and have a short conversation with them and somehow feel like as if you were really at a real conference. So please, if you feel like, definitely join the next session. And we are very, very, very happy to have had you all here, and special thanks for the presenters as well. Okay, and definitely enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.